Hi everybody, Hellcracks here, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts from the Dystopian World, episode 16. So they're getting up there a little bit. And just taking a little bit of time after doing some cleanup after Hurricane Steve ripped through the Midwest. Yes, we get back to some Dystopian War stuff. And today we're going to be talking about the Valley. Yes, the Valley, from the Federated States of America, FSA. One of my favorite airships in the game, because it can bring a lot to the table for when it, for its activities, its capabilities, and just downright blastiness. Is that a word? Yeah, I don't know. It's a new word now. Welcome to the English language. All right, so episode 16. Here we go. A airship. It's a pretty good ship. It's pretty rugged. It can lay down some good fire. It has some good firing arcs. And actually some good equipment on board too. Alright, it comes in 145 points, which is pretty respectable. It's, we're talking less than a battleship. And it's sort of like a battle cruiser that floats through the air. Hey, that's not the love about that. It has on board since it's a large aerial capital ship, it has to use the 45-degree turning arc. It has a minimum movement of 2, so it has to go forward 2 inches before you can make another turn, and then go forward 2 inches before you can make another turn. It's a squadron size of 1, so it's by itself. Well, that's not so bad. Typical with your large capital ships. They're just solos out there by themselves with lots of people in the wings as part of the party to keep them happy. Now, excuse me. The weapons on board, we have the broadside, a 4 rocket batteries, and some bomb bays. Yes, we'll get to those in a second. The DR and the CR is 7 and 9, so it's pretty good. Takes 7 hits to do a DR on this thing. It doesn't have anything else on board to stop that from happening, but it's one of those airships that just, we're going to have to take it and move on. The CR is 9, so it's going to take 9 hits from some type of guns or rockets or something of that nature to get a crit on it. But, if it does get a crit, nature of the beast. That's why we play these games. So, it's pretty rugged. It can handle itself pretty good. It's comparable, like I said, it's a floating battle cruiser. The movement is 7, so it's not fast, it's not slow, so it's kind of methodical. In a way, being slow is not a big issue per se. It's just a matter of just takes it time to get to where it needs to be, especially when you have that 45-degree turning arc, so it's going to take you a while to get there. Now, it does have 9 hull points on board, so that's pretty good. That's comparable to what you see on a battleship. So nothing to complain about there. It has a lot of assault points on board. It had 9, so that's pretty good. So if someone decides to fly too close to this thing, out come the jump pack infantry and jump across and assault you. And speaking of assaulting, this crew is aggressive. So they hit really easy. So, they go out there, they're going to hammer somebody pretty hard. When it comes to jumping across and hitting your different crew types, I do believe that's on a 4+ for the crew type. I do believe for defense, let's see, aggressive. They hit on a 3 and they defend on a 4. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, just had to make sure I got that correct again. The wonderful thing about this is that there is a MAR that you can purchase to get it up to elite, so they defend on a 3 for 15 points. So that's an option. So you could drop jump this thing up to 160 points and have an elite crew versus the aggressive. So, but to be honest, it's not very often that this thing gets itself into a circumstance where it's having to attack or defend. And to me, it's not quite worth the points, 15 points, to spend on more aggressive crew, because typically I leave that to ships on the water. But you could have aerial action where you're trying to take on someone else's sky airship and jumping across and try to take it out that way. So it can happen, but typically I'd rather spend the points elsewhere. The ACAC is 7. That's pretty respectable. You'd think that something like this, you know, being that it's a flying and it's going to be around aircraft a lot, you're going to have a few dice to go with it. So 7 is not bad. The CC is 3, which is really, it's a flying ship. When is it going to see torpedoes coming at it? So, to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever seen because a torpedo in the air is called a rocket. All right, so really that could be probably a 0, but you know, you never know. They put these placeholder type stats in there just because eventually there might be some weapon systems out there that actually have torpedoes. So who knows? It has a RAM rating of 5. So if you bump into somebody, 5 dice could do some damage to somebody, friendly or foe. So you might want to keep an eye on where you're flying to. And if somebody decides to drop an aircraft in front of you, you know, that you could collide with them. So you might be able to run them over too. Alright, so that's all the basic stats on this thing. Now let's get on to the weapon systems. This does have a broadside, which goes out to range band 4. It's only a 3 dice, but 3 dice is better than no dice. So if you're facing off against somebody out at range band 4, you can hit them for 3 dice, and if you got 3 6s, you know, you could hurt somebody. So it's always worth just throwing the dice and saying, yeah, what the heck, see what happens. Now this is where it starts getting pretty good. Now if you find somebody at range band 3, you're throwing 5 dice. Now with 5 dice, you're starting to get into the chance where you can do some damage against, like, say, cruisers and destroyers with a better chance. Now if you get into range band 2, which means you're actually flying pretty close to somebody, and typically you're looking at like the 3rd, 4th turn when you're starting to see this kind of thing happening, and you got 7 dice to throw around. 7 is doing pretty good. You're going to probably do some good damage against a cruiser. You might even have a chance to do some good damage against a battleship, basic battleship or battlecruiser. And then if you get into close, it's S weapons, so you can fire into range band 1. And if there's an aerial ship nearby, you can fire into range band 1 and hammer them pretty hard with 9 dice, if you haven't taken any damage yourself. So your mileage may vary. Now this next weapon system, the tertiary weapon, is the 4 rocket battery. I say batteries. Start playing a Metallica song here. Batteries. Goes out to range band 3. Now there's 2 of them. There's an inside battery and an outside battery. That's the fixed 4 channel, so it's the width of the base basically. And so anything that's out to range band 3, you can combine them together, link them together. And with linked, you know, you're looking at 9. Half of 9 is 5. So you're looking at 14 dice. That's really good. And that's the sweet spot for this airship, is if you can find targets, angle for your targets to be in range band 3 for the most part, you're going to do some good damage with this thing. Yeah, it's rockets. They can shoot down the rockets, and if they have shields, then you can knock down some more. But it's a good harassment type of weapon system on board. And then if they're in range band 2, you're throwing 12 dice. And if they're in range band 1, it's going to be 11. So, yeah. Well, not bad. So, you're looking at some decent dice being tossed around, you know, with your rocket batteries. And if they... A lot of times, whenever somebody sees a Valley Airship on my side, they always have a tendency to try to concentrate on these things and knock them out of the sky. So it's one of those things where if they're concentrating on one thing to knock it out, that means there's something else in your fleet's not being shot at. So that might be the difference between your cruisers getting closer, maybe your destroyers getting a little closer to being able to fire, laying down some rocket barrages with your Federated States, or even, you know, your frigates moving up or your corvettes. So it's a big fire magnet, to put it bluntly. That is, you know, where it kind of shines in a way. It's got pretty good rugged construction. Now, that's the one thing about this thing. The MAR on this model assigned rule is rugged construction. So if someone has all right, they tally up all the dice pool that they automatically have to subtract 1 from it because of the rugged construction 1. So if they had 9 dice throwing at you, they subtract 1, and now they can only throw 8. And if they had 5, it's 4. So that's one thing that keeps this thing alive a little bit better, because that 1 die could be the difference between getting a DR and a C or a DR and nothing. So that's the wonderful thing about this thing, the rugged construction. Now, the third weapon system on board this thing is the bomb bays. You have 3 of them. 3 bomb bays on board. That is good with 3 bomb bays, because if someone happens to take their little frigate squadron or corvette squadron or even cruiser squadrons and happen to be underneath you and you fly over top of them, you can drop a load of bombs on their head as you go over or next to them. So they have a range of 2 inches. So you look at the base, measure out 2 inches, and you can place a template underneath you or as you go along. So that would be the nice little thing about it. So they're an area bombardment. Basically, it's indiscriminate attacks. And so you have 3 of them. There's only 6 dice with it, but 6 dice against with indiscriminate attack versus, like, say, corvettes and frigates or even destroyers, that's some good damage. You're going to either hurt them or destroy them. And a lot of times, individuals will see one of these things floating towards them and go, I'm going to try to skirt this thing as much as possible. The closing distance with that 7 isn't all that great, and it doesn't have a great turning radius. But if it lines up, and I've had them line up before, you're going to get hit with some bombs. And let me tell you, I've dropped bombs on top of some frigate squadrons before, and then watched the 2 squadrons as it flies over wipe out 2 complete squadrons just with a bombing run. So, and you take a little bit of ACAC damage in the process, but, you know, I will trade, you know, take out like 2 squadrons of frigates for some damage on an airship like this. So that's its job. Now, one of the other options you can add to this thing is the target painter for the rockets. You can measure out to 24 inches, which is your 3rd range band, which is great. So if you have the target is in your 4 rocket batteries are in range, hit them with the target painter, and then you have a +1 to hit. So yeah, that's the wonderful thing about it. So even though you may be rolling so many dice with a target painter, you're going to hit more. So some of those were going to be 3s that you roll. That's 1 point. And if you say they're at the range band 3 and you light them up, suddenly you have a good chance of doing some really good damage to somebody. Sometimes it may getting, say, a CR or DR the hard way, which means it's all ones and no exploding dice mechanic involved. But, you know, if you're out there at range band 3 and you hit them with 14 dice because you lit them up, you know, you're only missing on 1s and 2s. So that's good. Really good. Nice. 2 thumbs up. Alright, so that is the Valley Airship. Basically, its stats in a nutshell. Now, how do I like using this? Well, the Valley Airship is one of those things, like I said, its sweet spot for this thing is to run around in range band 3. If you can angle this so you're, you know, kind of angled across the table so you're hitting targets, you know, you look out there and go, okay, these guys are in within the range band 3, kind of angle your, move your ship, angle it, point the rockets at somebody, and then you have these nice broadside arcs to catch somebody off on the other flank. A lot of times it may be the flank could be in range band 3 also. They may be even closer. So you send the rockets this direction, and then you send the guns in another direction. Another tactic I kind of use sometimes, let's say you got a squadron out there. Let's say you got a cruiser squadron with only 2 ships. Send the rocket battery of 9 dice at one, and then target painter to the other. And then, so they got 9 dice here, 9 dice there in the 3rd range band. And that way they can't combine their, you know, link together, their ACAC together. Now, if one of those ships happens to have no, you know, if their defenses are down, they don't have any ACAC, hammer that ship, blow it off the face of the, off the water or face of the earth if you can. And this is being that it's an airship, you can also use this in land engagements too, because there's more aspect to this game than just naval. There's land warfare too, and then one of these ships works really good running on the land too. Flying over hills, over dale, all along the Dusty Trail, and basically blasting your targets out. And it really good because a lot of times in like the land games, you're going to have targets that are moving slower or fixed positions, where you can go over top. Let's say you're playing a game where they got a lot of infantry, or they have some type of defensive bunkers and stuff. You can fly over top of it and drop the bomb load over while you're blasting away. And sometimes if you get it close, you know, yeah, your rockets may be shooting in, say, range band 1 or 2, but your side batteries, you got both sides. Your broadsides could be shooting one direction and shooting on the other direction too. So you can be hitting up to 4 targets. And then drop the bombs on somebody, so there could be 5 or 6 targets that you can hit with in one go with this thing. So that works pretty good. Now, a lot of times, this, like I said, this airship can be susceptible to like gunnery fire, naval gunnery fire from like capital ships themselves, getting hit by battleships or cruisers or dreadnoughts. But also you have to keep an eye on their small air squadrons coming in, doing attack runs on this thing, doing a dive bomb run on it. Then you also have to worry about fighters doing strafing runs on it. And then there's other small bombers involved in other airships too that can engage it and get in close, because there's some airships in the game that have aerial hunter, and their whole job is to attack things in the air, so they get bonuses for attacking stuff there. So you got to keep an eye on not letting things get too close to you. Alright, so that is the Valley. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I like this ship. I have 2 of them for a reason, because I think that there are a lot of times I like taking them in the game, and there have been a few cases where I decide I'd rather have 2 of these than 2 aircraft carriers. Just because I'd rather have something that shoots a little bit farther, does some damage over time before, let's say, your carrier action versus, you know. But in large games, I can get a carrier and one of these in the game too. So, all right, that's the Valley. Hope you guys like it. Like and subscribe, share with all your friends, and we will talk with y'all later. And Hellcrex out.